Clarity Act could be incoming. Today we're going to break it down with an expert that I think you guys will like. It is going to be an awesome one, so don't miss it. Let's get into our sponsor, and that of course is BTCC. This is where you guys can get into trading and doing all sorts of things, whether you like to go long, short, maybe do a little bit of leverage. All of that's available over on BTCC. You can use our link down below to kind of get started over there. A couple of things they're doing over there for VIP members, and of course lower trading fees. So that's the main thing, is to get better value in all your trades out there. Check it out, use our link to get started over on BTCC and get going. Hey, listen, there's a lot happening between now and January 15th, which is when we will see a dual markup stage in the Clarity Act. And of course, what to expect from DC is the real question mark. I'm watching this closely because there are a lot of unusual characters in DC right now. We don't really know for sure what does this mean. I was looking at this one that kind of broke down a whole list, and there was the U.S. Senate voting record on the Genius Act, and I'll just showcase this a little bit before we bring our guest on. And you guys can screenshot this right here so you can kind of see who is voting in your area right there. That kind of gives you a little bit of understanding of what's happening in DC, or getting ready to happen in DC around the Clarity Act. So we wanted to bring on Amanda Tuminelli, who is coming in from the DeFi Education Fund. She's been on before. Amanda, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So I see that you guys, of course, are very active in DC, and of course you're in the position right now to educate not only Congress, but I think a lot of people around how DeFi is really a good thing for blockchain going forward. When you look at the current status of the Clarity Act, why do you think it has taken so long? Has it just been timing with what's going on in Congress right now with other bills? What has been the holdup?
Well, I actually think progress is being made on a relatively quick pace, right? Having a committee markup next week after we saw a draft a few months ago is actually, a sign of progress, a sign that we're moving towards potentially seeing a final bill for a vote.
Listen, I had Warren Davidson on earlier this week, and we got into some of the details on this. Obviously, this gets into the whole idea around self-custody and KYC, some of the things he kind of champions. When you look at the compromises that could be made on these markups going to where it would get to a vote and then eventually to Trump's desk, is there anything there that you're concerned about, especially in the area of KYC and self-custody?
Yeah, those are actually some of the key issues that we are focused on at DEF, and I think for anybody who is an advocate for DeFi. We want to make sure, as Representative Davidson has very well clearly articulated, that self-custody is protected for all Americans. There should not be unreasonable securities regulation or unreasonable commodities regulation that results in people not being able to self-custody their own assets. Similarly, we want to make sure that this bill doesn't treat software developers who never take custody or control over anybody else's assets as if they are financial institutions. So that really is like the underlying premise on everything that we focus on in the bill, making sure that decentralized technology and software developers are not treated as if they are centralized operators of financial institutions.
Okay, so with that being one of the cornerstones of how Clarity could get through, do you think it's possible that we could still see this bill passing in the first quarter of this year?
I definitely think it's possible. I think that a lot is going to ride on the next week or two because we have a banking committee markup scheduled for the 15th. So that's next week. And the agriculture committee is also saying that they're going to mark up next week. So if we have both of those markups and we get to a draft text, right? And a lot of us still have not seen the full bill, or actually I don't think anyone's really publicly seen the full bill. So until we see that with full comprehensive understanding of how they are treating DeFi technology and software developers, we just don't know how quickly this can proceed. People are trying to learn as they legislate, and I think that's really tough to do. So it's definitely possible, but we do have more work to do, I'd say.
Okay, what would be your statement here when you get into banks and the initiative that they have put underway, all the lobby groups that are really pushing hard to essentially take away the yields for stablecoins? And when you look at that being one of the critical aspects of the Genius Act, is there any way that this could actually come into clarity where stablecoin yields could be at risk?
So that is one of the hotly debated topics right now. The Genius Act, which is passed law, passed legislation, right, as of July, and that was bipartisan, full vote. That is the law. Genius only said that issuers cannot give rewards to users, right? And it left open this possibility that third parties can give rewards and yield to users. So the law right now is that. Right now, the banks are trying to reopen that topic and trying to reopen settled law to ban third parties from giving rewards to users or giving yield to users. So they are making this an issue when the status quo is actually that third parties can issue rewards to users. Right. So I do think that continues to be a topic of debate because it's very important to everyone, to users who want to receive those rewards and to the companies in crypto who want to reward their users. It's really important across the board.
This, of course, if anything like this actually were to come to reality, this is going to put a lot of people back into the zone of DeFi wallets. I mean, we've seen this with the Slush project, with SWI. You look at that along with others out there that have kind of gone in this direction around DeFi. Do you think that would create just an absolute mass exodus? Because I think the banks are concerned that people are going to exit their deposit accounts and go into Coinbase or Kraken or Robinhood or wherever. But they may do this with DeFi anyway. So I don't understand what the logic is. What's the presentation from what you're hearing from the lobbyists on the banking side of this? Why would it matter?
So my understanding is that the banks are arguing exactly as you just said, that there's going to be flight risk from banking institutions. I really think that that is a distraction from the actual issue, which is that banks are worried about their incumbency, right? They want to protect their ability to have the largest volume within their institutions. So the fact is that users are choosing to use self-custody wallets, use crypto regardless. That is the future. I think that's where we're going, regardless of any of these rules. So I really think that they're fighting a losing battle, but they may do enough to hold up market structure legislation. And it really would be a shame if digital asset market structure legislation is held up because traditional finance are the ones that are making it impossible to get through.
Well, okay, you say that, and then Citadel puts out a report that completely got DeFi wrong. I mean, this is Citadel, and we're talking Ken Griffey here. You put out a tweet, Citadel got it wrong here. Explain to me what the problem was that you guys found within this. What was so imperative that said, hey, we got to get people aware of this?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you raised it because I think that more people need to understand what's actually happening here. So many traditional financial institutions are putting in letters or advocating for a position that is not sound, that is not actually based in the law, which is that even non-custodial, non-controlling developers should be forced to register as securities brokers and securities exchanges. And what Citadel argued in their letter is that vast swaths of the DeFi ecosystem, from non-custodial wallet developers all the way to exchange operators, should all have to register as securities brokers or exchanges. And they make this argument based on their view of the securities laws. But I would note that Chair Atkins and Commissioner Peirce have made a lot of statements recently that make it clear that Citadel's position is not aligned with the SEC's own position of securities law. The SEC has made it clear that they believe that decentralized systems should be treated separately from centralized systems, and they understand that difference in the technology. So our letter wrote back to clarify how the technology actually works and to correct the record on some of the citations that Citadel offered that were not fair citations of our own work and the other people who signed our letter.
5 years ago, I went to DC, had a chance to meet with some people in Congress. There were almost zero lobby firms out there pushing for crypto, okay? And now you go back 5 years later, and it is absolutely inundated. We're seeing lobby firms all around. You just mentioned one with the Solana Foundation. We've got Coinbase and all of the banking committees that have lobbyists in there. Who is defending the people outside of you guys? I mean, on the DeFi side versus the corporate side of crypto. Is there anybody else we should be talking to kind of spread the word here?
Well, I do think the trade associations like the Blockchain Association and Crypto Council for Innovation and the Digital Chamber and organizations like Solana Policy Institute and Coin Center are actually pushing for users, right? They are also pushing for users of crypto and people building it. So I do think that together we are speaking with a united voice and saying that we want market structure legislation that makes sense for the industry. But to your point, there has been an expansion in these policy efforts. And I think that's because we're seeing more opposition from traditional financial actors in getting this done. So, you have to rise to meet the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I'm always concerned because, when I go to these events, what I see mostly is corporate. This is the area that I think is a blind spot to DC. They know very little about it and really how it even works. And whether or not it could even be regulated is the real question. Of course, Chair Atkins, you have already mentioned there, understands that. And I think that's at least a good thing from the SEC side. I want to get into a couple other things within Clarity. Within the Clarity Act, there is a stipulation that would get into the potential, if you want to become fully decentralized, of you having to burn tokens if you're an organization. Is that going to happen? Do you think we're going to see companies out there actually do that to become more decentralized?
Oh, so yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know because like we said, we haven't seen the final text. And I think what you're referring to is part of the token classification section of the bill, which explains how a token issuer can release a token compliantly and whether the token should be treated as a network token or a digital commodity or whatever it's going to be. Yes. That part of the bill is definitely still under work. Like they're still working on it. And I think when we see text on Monday, I'll have a better answer to your question.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get there. One thing I'm watching is the potential that if that were to come into the text, we could see companies like Ripple getting out there to where they might, in fact, want to go out there and burn tokens and become more decentralized. So I'm watching that very closely. Do you think, all right, so there's some concessions. I talked about this with Warren Davidson, and he actually said the words that I was thinking, and I asked him the question point blank. I said, do you think that maybe the Democrats would go ahead and agree and get into a more partisan approach toward Clarity if the Trump token was kind of thrown on the altar as an opportunity, saying, hey, Trump's got to get out of the meme coin business? Do you think Trump would do that? Do you think he'd allow that to occur?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I think that this bill, ethics and whether any member of the government can even have a token is definitely still being talked about. And I think it's an open question right now as to where that's going to end up.
All right. So within that, obviously that boils down to one last thing. If that were to happen, do you think Trump would sign the bill if it actually came through?
I really don't like hypotheticals that put me in a position to speculate as to what the president's going to do. I really don't know. I really think the White House has been clear in being motivated that they want market structure legislation to happen. I know that. Obviously, President Trump has been moving this forward and telling members of Congress to keep working and make sure that this gets done as soon as possible. So I do think that they are pushing for progress, and that's all I have heard is that they want this to get done.
For our audience, I'll show you guys this right here, which is that there is some Trump tokens on the move. So maybe there is some scenario playing out here where this might be a little bit of a sacrificial lamb going into this bill. I don't know. I'm just saying, guys, I follow where things are going in the market and how these blockchains are moving around. So we'll see how that plays into it. A couple other points I wanted to hit on. Accredited investor rules. Do you think they'll be next?
It's possible. The SEC has a aggressive agenda and they're moving quickly. I think the crypto task force has been really making a lot of forward progress, and I do think we're going to see rulemaking very soon. I'm actually really hopeful that what we're going to see before we get there is a general innovation exemption, which Chair Atkins has teased in the past, right? A way that people can understand what their obligations are when they're creating tokens or when they're decentralizing. So I really think we're going to get rules very soon. I don't know if accredited investor will happen right away, but it's obviously an area that we are focused on and that many other people care about deeply.
What about the de minimis tax? Do you feel that's something that might make its way through Congress?
So there recently was a tax bill proposed, and I think it has the good aims. I think the goals there are good, and I think that it is possible we will see that. So the bill was introduced in December 2025, and it actually aims to eliminate excessive tax on routine customer transactions. So I think that we might see that move in the next few months, but I know that that is actively being worked on at this moment.
All right, I guess just a couple more questions in reference to what's happening right now at the Fed and also at the SEC. All of this is aligning somewhat with Trump's administration. You look at what, of course, Paul Atkins has been able to do at the SEC already. But if Trump were to not make it through and a Republican administration doesn't get revoted in, could we see Gary Gensler come back in as an SEC chair? On the Democratic side.
Not even. What a concerning thought. I had not even considered that possibility. No, I do think that for the next 3 years, I think it's clear that we're going to have a productive chair and a productive commission. Obviously, if the administration changes, then the makeup of the commission will change. My hope is that we will actually get some clear rules in place and maybe some clear law in place as well that would confine the ability of the SEC to go backwards, right? That's why market structure is so important, because it will be permanent statutory fixes that no matter who ends up being the SEC chair will control what the SEC can do.
Yeah. Before I get into the topic on social, because I'm looking at this as a regulatory framework, because we could see payments. Also the moves in Japan. They've got a flat tax underway right now. I know Congress, I've talked to several Congress people who are watching what's going on in Japan. Do you think this is something that DC is paying attention to, how other countries are treating crypto right now in their decision-making process for this Clarity Act?
I do think that they're paying attention. I think the U.S. wants to lead on this stuff, right? I think we want to be able to be the standard and set a standard as to how digital assets are going to be treated. And, Europe has MiCA, so they kind of got out in front of us a little bit. They already have a market structure legislation in place. So I think the U.S. wants to move quickly and be a leader here. So I'm sure they're paying attention, and that's why people are working so hard to get this done as soon as possible.
One other thing that I'm looking at right now is social media. This was a post by Vitalik. He's kind of talking about the birth of the internet, and that these people who are kind of creating this is all good. The question is social media the next regulatory frontier? What do you think? Do you think we'll start, especially as we see transactions going through it?
Yeah, it's a good question, because this actually brings to mind some of the arguments that we're hearing out of traditional finance, right? If you want to take the position that a front end, like a mere user interface, can be regulated as the securities intermediary, well, then that has a really broad application, right? Then that applies to browsers,
X,
right?
Yep.
Browser,
Google
right?
Chrome.
So it really, right? The implications of that argument are really concerning. So I think that's why it's so important. The work that we're doing right now, which is to cabin these broad, sweeping definitions and make sure that they clearly only apply to what they were meant to apply to when Congress passed the securities laws. So that should prevent scope creep, right? Prevent these definitions from creeping out into other areas.
Yeah. Is there a line in the sand for all the lobbyists that are pro-crypto in DC that Congress cannot cross? Whether it's KYC, self-custody, the banks, pulling the Trump card on earning interest on stablecoins, anything that you would say this is the no-go zone?
Well, I'll only speak for my organization. I could tell you for my organization, our line is making sure that software developers are protected. That is where we will draw the line. So ensuring that developers are treated fairly, not subject to unfair securities regulation and commodities regulation, and that they're not treated as money transmitters when they're not money transmitters, and that self-custody is protected. Those are our red lines. That's where we will hold those lines. But I will say that the committee staff working on this have been really respectful of these issues and understand those issues, and are also, I think, on the same page with us as to how important they are.
Yeah, for sure. Amanda, hey, this has been great. I feel a little bit more clear on this, and I'm actually, even after talking to Congressman Davidson, I felt a little bit like he was backpedaling in the sense of saying he felt like there was a little pressure, but I think he was sandbagging. That's what I think he was doing. He was sandbagging on the show, thinking, don't expect too much, and then they go, hopefully we'll get a delivery of the Clarity Act. But thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.